Okay, I'm at the David hearing. This is now day 3, and today was straight back-to-back drama. It was nothing but drama in the courtroom. 2 people got kicked out at the start. One of them is very, very well known, somebody that you guys will definitely know. It was crazy. So look, I'm gonna break it down to you. We got to the courthouse today, and I was already aware that basically somebody from a certain news organization, I won't say who or what or why or what was going on, but basically somebody had put up a video yesterday in the afternoon. So we came out of court, and I saw a video going around on social media of someone basically saying, oh, we're getting live updates from inside the courtroom. We've got our reporter inside there, and she's sending us live updates of everything that's happened from inside the courtroom while they're there. That's a big no-no. The judge has said time and time again that basically there is no live reporting, there's no live tweeting, there's no sending Discord messages, there's no nothing. She didn't define or explain, every single way that you might send somebody a message, but made it very, very clear that that was not going to run, that was not cool, that was not flying by any means at all. And somebody seemed to have the bright idea to use a active and live Google Docs document where somebody else somewhere could see the updates and the edits they were making to that Google document live in the courtroom with their laptop. Now, some people have been allowed laptops. I did use a laptop for a little bit on the first day. I honestly found that writing in my notebook was actually a lot better, so I've just stuck to the notebook, and thankfully so, because they were hot on anybody with a laptop. Now, I saw this video going around yesterday. Everybody saw it. When we came to court today, it was unfortunately not looking good for independent media. I was nearly ready to go home and do a live stream and talk about how I didn't get let into the courtroom, because they basically said, honestly, I was a little bit disappointed at this. They basically said, oh yeah, because of this video going around and because of this, people using laptops and broadcasting live inside, we're going to be way hotter on people today. And they said, what network are you from? I said, oh, I post on YouTube, I'm media. And they were like, YouTube, nah, not sure you're going to get in today. I was shocked, to be honest with you. I was really taken aback, thinking that's really how they're going to do me. And it was mainstream media that had been broadcasting live from the courtroom, but they were punishing everybody, so everybody was pissed. And after that, fortunately, I won the lottery. Okay, 3 days in a row. I've seen some people won the lottery 3 days in a row. I don't know what's going on with that, but I won the lottery day 3. A couple other people won the lottery. Also, a lottery winner who was allowed in, Steve Fisher. SF Investigates, the private investigator that was employed by the homeowner of the house that David was living in when the murder allegedly took place, may well have been the location of the murder for all we know. We haven't really heard evidence for that yet, but does sound like we're going to be hearing something about that. But anyway, so Steve won the lottery, I won the lottery, a couple other great people won the lottery. Good for us, good for them. It was really it was a lucky day, because it didn't sound like they was letting no YouTubers or any independent media into the court, despite the fact that mainstream media were the ones who were leaking information. So I don't really respect that whatsoever. I was quite upset, because everybody else has followed the rules. The independent media are following the rules, but you got mainstream media using Google Docs to basically sneak information to people that aren't even in the state of California. I didn't respect that at all. I thought that was super lame, super out of line, and everybody else, the independents were getting punished for the mainstream people. Basically, I don't know if it's a crime, but it was definitely a violation, and the judge was pissed. So once we got into court, not only the judge, but Beth Silverman, the deputy DA, was pissed. They came in with a bad attitude, I'm not going to lie. No disrespect to them, but they were both pissed. They were both upset. They weren't happy with things that were going on. And basically the judge says, look, I want to put something on the record. And Beth's like, I want to put something on the record too. It wasn't clear whether they were going to be on the same thing that they were going to be talking about. I kind of knew, I had an inkling, because I could seen all the fuckery that had gone on in and around the court. So basically, the girl that had the illicit Google Doc broadcasting information that they shouldn't have, the judge basically pulled them up in front of the court, just like they pulled Celeste's family's civil lawyer in front of the court for having a laptop when he shouldn't have, because he's not a media yesterday. They pulled her up in front of the court, admonished her in front of everybody, said, we've made it clear. They had the bailiff come out and said, repeat what you've said every single day about no live broadcasting, no live communications from inside the courtroom. Basically, it had it explained to everybody like we were children, just how obvious we've all been told time and time again. You don't need to tell me twice. I respect the rules. I respect the authority and the rule of law in that courtroom, especially whatever the judge says goes. Clearly not everybody felt that way, so she was hauled in front of everybody. She basically said, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't know that somebody else had access to that Google Doc. It's not what your colleague was saying. And I even said to her before it kicked off, I said to her, because I knew who it was, I said, look, I think you're in trouble. She was kind of like, oh, I don't think it's that much of a big deal. I was like, I don't know, I think you're in trouble. And the judge pulled her out in front of everybody, and she basically said, yeah, I didn't think someone else had access to the Google Doc. And I said to her, it sounds like your colleague stitched you up. And also, the judge basically made it clear that a complaint was made at 3:50 or so p.m. yesterday. So the person who posted that video saying we're getting live updates from inside the court, they posted it while court was still in session. So whatever organization that is, absolutely cooked. That was insane. And honestly, low key, like just really disrespectful to the courtroom. She was kicked out. They basically said, yeah, I've heard your excuse about Google Docs, but you've been told a million times, using a Google Doc to kind of get around and, you know, attack sort of the spirit of the word of what I said. Basically, it's kind of like, look, I don't need to sit here and list all the different kinds of collaborative word processors that exist that you can't use and exclude them. You know you shouldn't be able to broadcast from inside the courtroom, and you did it, and basically you're cooked. Kicked her out. But I ain't gonna lie, they said kicked out, you're kicked out for 1 day, just today. She's apparently gonna be allowed back in tomorrow. She's a nice person, no disrespect to her, but at the end of the day, it felt like they said that you ain't no YouTubers. They basically said like, oh, YouTube, I'm not sure you're gonna get in today because of something that mainstream media did, and then they get kicked out for 1 day. They're gonna be back tomorrow. Hopefully they ain't gonna be on no Google Docs, that's for sure. And I think she was officially banned from having a laptop throughout the rest of the proceedings. So she's gonna need to warm that wrist up and get the notepad out for the next few court dates, unfortunately. But I do really respect the judge, and I think everybody else, especially the independent media, have been just like so respectful, so positive, so following the rules, everyone on time, everybody acting in an orderly fashion. It was disappointing that somebody had upset the judge to that degree, and it seemed like really the little guys were the ones that were going to suffer, so that was really sad. In addition to that, I kind of saw it coming. Deputy DA Beth Silverman basically attacked Steve Fisher, not physically, but verbally, absolutely fried him, basically said he was at the grand jury, he's behaved inappropriately, he is a witness to aspects of this case, he was admonished for sharing information in the grand jury afterwards that he wasn't supposed to, he didn't show up when he was requested to come to the court for his admonishment, and basically said he needs to be kicked out, and then also said he had an improper conversation with Celeste's family civil lawyer outside the courtroom, and she said I had to intervene and pull him away from them. It was improper. Now, interestingly enough, okay, Steve actually stood up and he said, can I put something on the record to the judge? So Steve stood up for himself. Respect to Steve for standing up for himself. He's a stand-up guy. And I had a long conversation with him before trial. Before the hearing. We both won the lottery together. We were chit-chatting before, talking about some of the stuff that's been going around. And he said, look, I was approached by Celeste's family lawyer. I didn't approach them. I wasn't trying to have an improper conversation. Didn't even know who he was when he approached me. And Celeste's family lawyer then stood up and said, I can confirm that. I just approached him. I just recognized him from his coverage. I just wanted to say hello. It wasn't anything improper. And what was really interesting is Beth kind of seemed like she felt sidelined by the fact that, Celeste's family civil lawyer was stepping in to defend Steve, and then the judge basically said, well, look, I'm going to exclude Steve because it's improper. Might change a little bit later down the line if we can basically confirm that any of his grand jury testimony or anything else that he maybe bore witness to wasn't going to be included. But what was very interesting, this is crazy, I don't know if I'm going to get in any trouble for saying this to you guys, but basically after Steve was kicked out, I was sat a little bit closer to the front, and Beth basically turned around and absolutely fried Celeste's family lawyer, basically said, you know, you're way out of line for talking to him and stepping in and even trying to kind of defend him at a certain point. Basically made it very clear that she wasn't happy with him making press conferences outside. He did do a press conference yesterday, and basically I'm not gonna lie, it was very loud, so I'm sure the whole courtroom heard, but Beth basically says you can't do press conferences, you're out of bounds, you're doing too much, and she said to him numerous times, I can pull your badge. The badge that you get to actually get into the courtroom, she said, if you keep playing around, I can pull your badge. She literally said, I couldn't believe it. She said, I can pull your badge, see how far I'll take this. All right, she said, see how far I'll take this, I'll pull your badge numerous times. And she said something about his press conferences is just not really giving the right impression. And, you know, respectfully, I can understand why the deputy DA wouldn't want the family civil lawyer outside making press conferences when those aren't really the proceedings that are going on right now. She was clearly very upset and frustrated with him kind of stepping in and giving his thoughts on things, and even standing up and addressing the judge to defend Steve. So she was on smoke. I gotta give it to Beth Silverman. She's definitely super feisty. She's super passionate, but she's an amazing lawyer. So I understand why she was pissed off at everybody. It was probably a lot of shit that she was dealing with. She also kind of brought up that there was a lot of shuffling, moving around in the court, people dropping their drinks, noise in the hallways. It was very distracting being in there, and I completely understand where she was coming from with all of that stuff. So honestly, I respect her, and I can see why she was frustrated, but she was pissed. She was super pissed. I would not want to get on her wrong side. So, you know what I'm saying? If anybody wants to send this to her, I'm Team Beth, all right? I'm utmost respect for what you do. You know, your career's been amazing. It's a pleasure to watch you work. Clearly you're in your element, killing it at what you do. They're saying they call you the sniper. I've definitely seen you snipe a few people already. utmost respect and just absolutely nothing. You know, I don't want no smoke. Blair Burke's very interesting. She's kind of like very, very different. You know, she's very laid back. She's given that maternal vibe to David. She's talking very softly and quietly. It's two completely different strategies going head to head, and it's extremely interesting. So I'm definitely finding, just observing, you know, the transparent legal process in the United States and the state of California playing out. It's an honor to even witness it. And you know, utmost respect to Beth and Blair, both of them. Respect both of them, all right? And Beth even said that somebody had disrespected her outside of the courtroom, and that was not on, and they were taken out. So I got literally zero anything bad to say. She's a legend, all right? She's killing it, all right? She's slaying it. So basically, after all of that was out the way, it was like a drama-filled intro. Like, we're 10 minutes in, the court ain't even started yet. So all of that was dealt with. All of the problems were ironed out, and then we basically kind of got to the bottom of you know, all of these little courtroom dramas, and then we finally got on to actually what was important, which were the details. So it was the pathologist that was on the stand that was there yesterday, criminalist, that basically had kind of you know, some of the evidence yesterday about all of the kind of blue star that they spray on things to see possible blood. We still haven't had confirmation that it was blood yet, but we kind of heard a little bit more about, you know, the positive testing for possible blood. They kind of went back and forth with Blair Burke about these chainsaws. It said that they found another saw, a third saw upstairs, also didn't test positive for any kind of possible blood. So they basically kind of went back and forth, and the sort of, I'm going to call it like a CSI, because I don't want to, that's just my reference point for this kind of behavior as far as like doing crime scene investigating. But they said they found a third electric saw, tested negative for phenolphthalein. They basically said that, you know, they didn't test these saws with the cut marks on the mat that was covered in possible blood, because they said there's no point. They said we didn't even test it for DNA. Clearly these weren't used to cut a body up. They weren't used to, they didn't generate any kind of positive proof of possible blood, so there was no point. They didn't collect them. They said there was, just didn't matter. What was interesting about that is that we then kind of heard from Blair afterwards. She sort of attacked that, was like, well, why didn't you take it? You know, you took other things that you didn't test, some things didn't test positive that you still took. And they basically said, look, it's at the discretion of the detective to decide what to take. I'm there to do tests. They can tell me to test certain things. If it doesn't react, it's up to them. They say, well, no point taking these chainsaws. These chainsaws are a distraction. They're clearly not ones that we used in the dismemberment, so we don't have any interest in them. So they kind of showed like, what was very interesting is one of the things, we'd heard about this burn cage that was found next to the piano on, what was it, the first floor of David's house. In the UK it's the ground floor, the first floor. In America it's the first floor. I think it's the second floor. Okay, in the US it would be the second floor, the garage floor. Anyway, all right, the piano that was on the sort of first living floor area, we basically saw a picture where there was no box with the burn cage. Now, the CSI basically said these pictures were taken right at the start when they entered, before anything had been touched, and there wasn't a burn box, there wasn't a burn cage. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't make any difference, but it did cast like a little shred of doubt onto the proceedings where, okay, well, if you're saying that you took pictures immediately before anything was touched, and you said you found this burn box that you didn't even take and you left it behind, where was it? Doesn't really make a difference to the situation when the garage is full of possible blood, but it just gave Blair Burke a little straw to clutch on, to be honest with you. And you know, she's clutching at straws, but there's definitely a lot of straws that are popping up that she's grabbing onto, and some of them, you know, some of them might take root at some point. So you got to give it to her. She's doing her best with what she has, but unfortunately there are a lot of dead ends popping up, and she's clearly just doing her best. So basically, Beth kind of took over, talked about basically like different items that were found. I'm gonna pass my camera over real quick so I can go two hands over here. But yeah, I'm gonna stand over here. Come a little closer. Cool. Okay, cool. So from here, we kind of have like a whole bunch of back and forths about why did you collect certain things, why didn't you collect other things, which things did you test for DNA, which things couldn't you test for DNA. They basically kind of went back and forth. It didn't really go anywhere, okay? Blair Burke took over, basically talked about, you know, you were directed to find tools for dismemberment, right? And they said, yeah, we only took items that could be processed. And they basically, she just kept asking over and over again, like we saw yesterday in court, why didn't you take the saw? Why didn't you take the saw? And it was like, because there was no possible blood on it. And it didn't really go anywhere. They said, look, we determined there was no value to those. We left them behind. Blair tried to bring up another point, basically saying, okay, well, if you didn't know if somebody else left DNA on it, somebody else could have left touch DNA on the handle of those chainsaws. I think she was trying to build a narrative that maybe somebody else, Rob maybe, had, you know, taken part in this dismemberment. But again, it was like, well, there's no blood on those saws, so it doesn't matter if Rob, it doesn't matter if you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter if anybody's DNA is on the handle of those chainsaws. They weren't used to commit a crime, so it did not matter. So Blair's angle there didn't really go anywhere. But again, she was trying. She was pulling all the moves that she could, and you know, respect to her for trying her best to find the angles that worked. So they basically went on to say that they don't take any DNA, they don't do touch DNA testing for barely anything in somebody's own residence, because it's assumed his DNA is probably on absolutely everything in the house. It's his house where he's living. Now, Blair clapped back and said that basically, oh, well, you knew other people were living in the house. And she said, yeah, we were aware other people lived at the house. It was a rental property. But again, you got a chainsaw with no possible blood on it. There's just no point. And that was kind of it. So then we moved on to another witness. And this was a criminalist in trace, who was a criminalist in the trace analysis department, a level 3 criminalist, been with the department for 26 years, 22 years in trace analysis, a very, very high level operator when it comes to evidence. And I would say this was very, very damning. There was a lot of stuff that was given, but I won't give you all of it, but I'll just make it very, very clear. They had the blue kiddie pool that was allegedly used as the basin where the dismemberment taken place in the garage. We'd already seen that pool had, you know, loads of possible blood on it. And what was really damning is that they found there are these kind of jagged cut marks on the kiddie pool where chunks were missing, and they took the blue chunks of plastic that were unfortunately found in Celeste's dismemberment wounds, as well as there was material that were found wrapped up in her tube socks, so it was tube socks, stockings, long socks that had been cut up that were retrieved from the body. And basically, they matched them up like a puzzle piece, the blue pieces to the kiddie pool. So the blue pieces that were found in the severed wounds and the kiddie pool that was allegedly used to as a basin to commit that horrible act, they matched up like a puzzle piece. And we saw at least 2 separate images of different puzzle pieces that connected perfectly. That was the same material that came out of the body that was from the kiddie pool. That was incredibly damning, if you ask me. I honestly don't think that there really is much else you could say to that. There was a few pieces that didn't fit. They suggested that some pieces had been lost, some pieces may have, you know, I don't know, been cleaned up, been moved separately. It was extremely bad. It was literally like, imagine a puzzle piece. One puzzle piece is found in the trunk of a Tesla next to a dead body, and one puzzle piece is found in the guy's house, and they connected together perfectly. That was so, so damning, and there really wasn't a good response to that. Those fragments connecting, they connected absolutely perfectly. It was a perfect fit, a perfect match. They connected like, it couldn't have been more perfect connection. It was crazy to even see it laid out, like the blue pieces. You get the gist. I've kind of explained it over and over again. So they had all different kind of fragments. Some of them didn't match up. Some of them, you know, were kind of disconnected in a way where they couldn't really connect to everything, but they had at least 2 that matched up perfectly. There really wasn't much comeback to that, to be honest. From there, we kind of heard and we saw pictures of some of the clothes that were recovered from Celeste's body inside the body bag. You know, they were just horrendous, rotten, completely destroyed, basically, just completely blackened. There was underwear from Victoria's Secret, socks from Skechers, Forever 21 tube top, and leggings from an unknown store. Celeste's parents were in the courthouse, in the room for that, and you know, it felt like that was really just horrible to kind of see the state of the clothing, and there were insects embedded in the clothing, dead insects in the clothing. It was just really horrible stuff, even though we've really seen much worse stuff, like even just the human cost of seeing that the state that the clothes were in, let alone that the actual person that was left behind, and rest in peace to Celeste. Even seeing the clothes was just really harrowing and heartbreaking. So it was claimed that when the clothing was actually given to the criminologist to analyze, they were still wet. They were still deteriorating due to bacteria and insect activity. They had a very strong smell, and she described them as very wet and in poor condition. She said the soiling of these clothes prevented her doing a comparison of fabric, and apparently a small fragment of black fabric was found in a trash bag in the garage, but they couldn't connect it, and they believed that it was potentially from the socks or the leggings, but they couldn't connect it. The clothes were too rotten, too waterlogged for them to do that connection. But there was a piece of fabric that was found, but unfortunately they couldn't tie that together. But again, it just goes to show you another piece of evidence, probably not going to be able to be used, but a piece of evidence that is certainly just another kind of like piece of icing on the cake when it comes to like fabric from the body. It was found inside the property. Okay, sure, we can't connect it because the clothes are rotten, but like this is just so bad. It's evidence on top of evidence. We've already got the blue fragments coming together like a puzzle piece, but you know, they nearly had the clothing in the house as well, and it was just horrible. They found black pieces of fabric inside the trash bag that were apparently kind of foam pieces that might have been kind of from the innards of the black rubber floor matting. You know how it's probably black hard on the top, a little bit soft. Those kind of gym mats that were in the garage, they probably have more of like a foam, softer stuffing inside them. They found pieces of that. And basically there was talk about some footprints apparently being unable to be lifted from the kiddie pool, and again that was kind of like a non-starter, because from there you sort of just heard like, we couldn't lift the fingerprint, sorry, the footprint, my fault, like a shoe print. They said we couldn't lift it, we didn't manage to manage to kind of get to the bottom of it and lift it. But what was really interesting about that is that essentially Blair kind of just, she grabbed for anything she could. She said, oh, well, the detectives didn't tell you a shoe. They didn't have a matching shoe of David's to even connect it to. So what's the point of getting the footprint? And it was like, well, yeah, we didn't even take the footprint, so it didn't even matter. So that was kind of very, very interesting. But it didn't really go anywhere. Again, it was like the really bad evidence and then a few other little pieces on top of it. And it was like Blair was just attacking whatever she could. It was bad, to be honest. It was really bad. So after that, we ended up hearing from a detective that basically did sort of the phone analysis and tracked kind of David's journey sort of up and down to Santa Barbara, which we've heard so much about. And we basically heard that his cell phone was basically accompanied by the Tesla within an hour of the alleged murder taking place at David's property, drove up all the way through Santa Barbara County, did interact with and pass the locations where Celeste's passport card was found, which again, really, really bad news. That's a really, really bad look for David. Like, he went to a Tesla supercharger that was 24 minutes from where Celeste's passport card was found, and he made that trip numerous times. So we heard loads of analysis, I won't bore you to death with it, but just about how this cell phone tower pinging system that triangulates where you are from your phone signal works. They explained loads and loads and loads of stuff about why this is accurate. I believe them. I don't need to bore you with the details, but they basically said your phone pings the cell tower, it comes back, they can find the coordinates, they can see you moving, they might not know exactly where you are in a pinpoint moment, but they can basically see the general area, and they showed a map of him moving all the way up the coast towards Santa Barbara County, having stops all along the way and all the way back down. They said that he had apparently called, or they said that David's phone, because they kept objecting to saying David, they said David's phone had called Celeste's phone at like 1 a.m. in Santa Barbara County, and it rang, went to voicemail, and wasn't answered. So again, sounds like he was maybe up there. I don't know what he is going to say, what his defense is going to be on that, but it really just sounded like a kind of a fake cover phone call to try and make it seem like he had contacted her. I don't know where she is, I don't know. I'm just driving up to Santa Barbara randomly in the middle of the night, all night long until 7 in the morning. Didn't really make any sense. But he made that journey up to Santa Barbara numerous times. He basically apparently went up there on April the 23rd, leaving around 11:31, driving all the way into the early hours of the morning of April the 24th, and ended up coming back early in the morning, basically arriving like 7 or so in the morning. There's a crazy loud siren, that's probably like drowning out what I'm saying right now, so I might let that pass by before I give you the last little piece of information. So I'm just gonna freestyle it until this goes. How much camera battery we got left right now?
We got 13.
13, okay, that's unlucky. I've been lucky today with winning the lottery, but I don't know about the camera battery luck. But anyway, he allegedly made that journey back to this remote area of Santa Barbara numerous times. They talked about another journey up there on May the 8th, 2025, which again, allegedly 3 days after the dismemberment, possibly to dump more evidence. We still don't have this, well, third chainsaw. People were talking about, oh, a third chainsaw was found in the house. Apparently it wasn't a chainsaw. It was like a small electronic cutting device that had nothing to do with, had no trace evidence of possible blood on it. So if I'm just going to give you my opinion, it sounds like the dismemberment took place on May the 5th, and we're going to hear some more evidence about that soon. But on May the 8th, he took another trip up to Santa Barbara County. Shovels have been bought and never found. I wonder if he buried the chainsaw somewhere along that path and they still haven't found it. So he apparently went up there, ended up driving like all the way back, arriving back home on May the 9th at 5:15 a.m. So he's up here doing all-night trips to go and like get rid of evidence and like go and disappear into these random places. It's very, very creepy. Apparently he did the drive again on May the 31st. Again, this was in the daytime, so it was like 1 to 5 p.m. That kind of journey took place, and he ended up getting back around like after 8:20, and he stopped at a destination at like 4:47. And again, this is apparently the journey where he stopped at a Tesla charging station that was 24 minutes away from where Celeste's passport card was found. It was Santa Ynez, and basically they confirmed that the Tesla infotainment system had the Santa Barbara charging locations that had been searched up, and basically they just confirmed it outright. The defendant's phone and his Tesla moved in unison all the way up to Santa Barbara County those 3 times. That was it. They left it as a break there. I'm gonna grab this. So basically, that was kind of the end of it. So we really kind of like heard quite a lot of stuff. There was a lot of drama in the courtroom today with all that stuff that was going on, but it was really interesting, and I feel like it's heating up. There's a lot of like technological evidence, a lot of kind of, some people were saying it afterwards like, oh, that was kind of boring. There was definitely a lot of kind of technology and a lot of background. I definitely was still very, very kind of gripped by all of the information that was coming out, and really I'm just gonna have to kind of yeah, just keep locked in, stay dialed in. The guy that was given that technological information, I ain't gonna lie, he was talking so fast. That guy is a fast talker. It was hard to even keep up with what he was saying. So I'm going to do my best to keep up, keep making my notes. I hope you found that update useful. I'm going to get this uploaded as soon as I possibly can, and I will see you guys for the next segment. What I'm going to do is go back inside, and then at the end of the day, I'll give you guys a full update of everything. But just stay tuned to my Instagram. I'm also posting on TikTok, Trap Law Clips. I guess somebody else got the Trap Law Ross TikTok before me, but we're going to get that ironed out. But check me out there. I'm just posting really quick updates. There's like little 10-15 minute breaks. I'm just coming and giving really quick updates and getting back in there. So if you want really quick, urgent updates, not from inside the courtroom though, because that's not allowed, and we're taking that very seriously. That was crazy. So thank you for watching this one. I'll keep you guys updated. Thank you to everybody that's helping and supporting. And thank you to my team, everybody that here that's just showing up, and members of the public that just want to see justice for Celeste. This is so important that we follow through and that we keep the community safe, and that we make sure that these horrible crimes are punished, prosecuted properly, professionally, and we're all just documenting the process for transparency, and I think it's really important. So thanks everybody. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out for now. Thanks.